Hi, I'm Andrew Armstrong and welcome to the Back Office Teardown Lab. Yes, I know I hear some audible groans from some of you who are not so keen on the Famicom content, but please bear with me. Think of it as a vehicle for learning some other stuff. Now this is a Famicom and I'm going to turn it on and you're going to hear there's an issue. Listen. So this is a Famicom that I've fixed the microphone input, and to be honest with you, I really don't know why it's so noisy, but it's just an awful design. I thought, why, oh why, oh why do we have a device that has this microphone input? I know it's novel at the time, but it's severely annoying because it just adds so much noise and you don't really use it in any games, and I'm certainly not doing any karaoke by singing into this mic and cranking up that volume. So what I did, I actually downloaded the schematics, and of course I had to use these before when I developed the power vamp board, available on the internet on my website. And I decided to actually have a look to see what's going on. So these are the regular AV Famicom, I don't know what you call it, schematics. That's just the regular ones we have. And I'm going to zoom right in because you can see this is the best you get, this kind of scroll, and you have to really eyeball it. But I'm going to show you the parts that we're interested in. So what you have in the Nintendo Famicom, and I do actually conveniently have the motherboard here, is you have a CPU and a PPU. So this is the CPU, that's the central processing unit. I can't remember off the top of my head, I think it's a 6527, something like that. And this is the PPU. Think of this as the custom chip that handles, you know, the bunch of the graphics and sprites and things like that. Then you have the RAM chip here and conveniently labeled certain, you know, logics, inverters, things like that. And then you have an SRAM. So there's lots of stuff here. But what's really nice is you can count the chips, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if you look here, you'll probably count 8. I'm thinking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Am I missing one? Yeah, remember some of these, this is the same chip basically. And down here is where the power vamp connects. This little boy here. But of course it has to interact with some of the other stuff. So you need to know, work your way up the chain. Now, the controller inputs are here in the top left, and now we are going to zoom right in so you can actually have a look. So you can see this is the left-hand side controller, and you've got your ground data output, out 0, whatever that does. I think that's the data in, perhaps, and then the voltage. So yeah, there's a lot of guessing there. That's because they're serial-ish devices and they've got a chip on board. But if you look at the right-hand side controller, which is marked as P5 here, you've got an extra thing here, which is called a microphone. And if you see the microphone here, God, please don't just call it microphone forever. It goes through a resistor here. There's a T point here, but it goes through a resistor here called R8, which is a 10K. And then it's moved out by a capacitor ground, and then goes into this line driver. And then if you follow it round, it eventually comes into this input D2 on the CPU, which is quite interesting, really, because it just literally does mean when you shout into that, there is a voltage coming into the CPU, which I think that's how it's registering for the games like Zelda if you're going to kill the Pulse voice. But what's actually quite interesting, if you work your way back though, from this D2, there is another line driver here, U8, and it is actually an input from a pull-up right here from that port that's on the front of a Famicom. So if you look at the front of a Famicom, you do get this port right here. And that's where that is. There's actually quite interesting stuff because it has a direct line, pretty much, buffered into the CPU. So who knew? So that microphone basically could be twiddled by that as well. And it wouldn't have the audio side. This would be basically like having a button just to activate whatever the microphone activates. So yeah, you could definitely get rid of the microphone totally and have a button that sits on here that you could press to do that. And in fact, why did I grab the Famicom when I could have just showed you this? Anyway, it doesn't matter. Now, if we follow the other branch where it's teed off here, zoop, let's zoom back in again. And we work our way down. You're going to follow it across. You can see this is not a great way of doing it. I've run out of desktop already, but you can see I've isolated this R3. So this R3 is a resistor in that path, and this is probably a good candidate. I think we're going to try whipping this out. if you want to just disable the microphone from the audio path. And then I noticed here on the CPU, and I think the CPU must handle audio, because there's an AUX A and an AUX B, so I wonder if there's two audio channels on the CPU itself, maybe a noise generator and something else like. And this is effectively the mixing circuit. So if you ever find that you've got weird volume levels between some of these things, it's probably the relationship with these resistors. You could probably tweak the mixer settings on it. And then what we'll do, we will follow that round, and it goes through here, and it nips all the way up here to another driver, which is another one of those line driver devices, and then just chucks it out to here. And you're like, oh, why does it chuck it out to there, which is the actual cartridge. This is the cartridge slot. And that's because, believe it or not, the sound hardware on the Famicoms go out to the cartridge and then come back in on the cartridge. So it goes out on pin 45 and then comes back in. So that allows the Famicom to have advanced sound generation on the cartridge itself if you want. In fact, the architecture is really interesting, because if you actually go through all of this, you'll see how the banks of the cartridge are stored as sort of program memory and sprite memory, and you have this separate audio. And it's open totally for mod chips. If you have these accelerator enhancement chips, you could make the Famicom do anything, and it's a beautiful design because of that. It's really open, and that's probably testament to why it lasted so long. And then of course we come in on 46, back down here, and you can see audio output, and that's really where we connect off to the vamp and to the outside world, and we listen to that audio and go, great. So I reckon we are going to go for removing this R3, and then we're just going to see if that does the trick, because frankly I am sick of hearing the hum on these things. I might just disconnect it partially and then let people reconnect it if they so wish, you know. Or, you know, an option is for people to maybe add a little switch even, if it's that, you know, it concerns them so much. Either way though, what's really great is you will disable the sound of that microphone, yeah, but you won't disable the functionality, because the wire that goes into the CPU is still actually going to be there. So you will still be able to play Zelda and shout into the microphone, and it will do the thing and defeat the whatever, and it will just not impede your gameplay. Frankly, I suspect once we work out this as a modification, we're all going to do it, because I really don't think any of us are going to miss that. Let's get on with it. Okay, it's unscrewed. I've flipped it over so we can have a nice look inside it. You can see it is actually powered on. Cartridge is in here. I've got the telly on mute, so I'm going to unmute the TV so you can hear what it sounds like. Right, definitely lots of noise there that we don't like. Now, looking at the PCB, I've isolated R3. That is the R3 right there. And in fact, I'm going to knock it off so we can zoom right in and have a look. And you can see R3 is right near the actual connector where it comes in, which is interesting. There's also an R8, and that was the other resistor that we saw that goes for the digital input. So the R8 is the digital input, and the R3 is the audio input. And if you actually disable the R8, you would actually disable the functionality to use that audio path, which I don't know why you bother. Maybe if it was giving you grief, you were defeating the Pole's voice too much. So what I'm going to do, I've got the soldering iron on. I'm just going to try to go in from the top, because I don't want to bother flipping it around. It's got the cartridge in it. It's a nice little test setup. And I'm going to hit it with the heat and gently try to lift that resistor leg up, which is fine. And there you go. It's lifted. It's totally lifted. So let's use that as an opportunity now to turn it back on and see what's going on. So the TV is on. That is absolutely beautiful. I am blown away. So that's just worked right away. So just lifting that little resistor is all you need to do. Now, if you're wondering, do you need to add any pull downs or anything like that? I don't think you do, because you've lifted the resistor. So this circuit now is going through these channels, and they are more or less pulling down here. So you shouldn't be really getting too much noise or interference coming through here. I think it's going to be fine. And that's very easy to reverse. And if you want to add a switch or something like that, you probably could. Again, comments down below. If you do this mod, would you ever bother undoing it? Let me know what you think. All I have to do now is put it back together and see if it still works. And now, of course, the moment of truth. Bench power supply is off. I'm going to turn it on. There we go. Yes, absolutely over the moon with that. Fantastic stuff. Now, what's super interesting, because of that mixer hardware, if you wanted to, technically, you could put an audio input there and attach it where that resistor was actually located. And then you'd be able to mix in your CD player if that's something that you might be inclined to do. So don't be afraid. And if we look at this other unit that's here, also that R3 and R8 are in exactly the same place here on this board as well. So it's likely it's going to be the same on most of them. Enjoy. Hope that makes your gaming experience a little bit more quiet in the future, and it'll get rid of that very annoying hum. Let's call this Dr. A's Famicom Microphone Mute. Dun, dun, dun.